Good morning. Today we're making some maple syrup. So the way we do it is we wait until sap needs to be running in the maple trees. For us here, we're typically just tapping almost exclusively silver maples. There are other maples to tap. Silver maples, interestingly, are said to not be the best tree, but we found them to be fantastic. In fact, the best syrup I've ever had. We wait until the conditions are right, meaning the ground has to be thawed enough to the point that the sap is now flowing from the tree down to the ground and coming back up to the tree. You need proper temperatures, so you need above freezing temperatures during the daytime, ideally sunny, not too windy, and you need below freezing temperatures at night. And you need that constant fluctuation for days in a row to get a good flow. And there's still going to be a lot of variables in terms of the sap itself. Last year, we got about 450 gallons of sap, turned it into 10 gallons of syrup. This year, we have only boiled down, which is what we're doing behind me here, boiled down about 200 gallons, and we're already over 10 gallons of syrup. Now, we do it old school, so we go out, tap the trees, we run the sap into these white buckets. So we have one bucket at a tree. Depending on the size of the tree, it might just have one tap, two taps. Really big trees, we might have 3 or even 4 if they're massive trees. To become a logger, we have to go out in the woods and we cut, buck and split and stack and haul all kinds of wood from dead, dying trees, things that we want to get rid of here on the property anyway. And then we're using that wood to heat our barrel stove that we put together here. Bought a little kit off Amazon, picked up the pipe and whatnot, and made a little stove, and then picked up a couple of hotel pans. We boil the sap in that. There are better ways to do it. The more money you throw at it, a lot of people that start this process start with something like this and end up building a sugar shack. And believe it or not, many backyard people can have into the hundreds of thousands of dollars into their sugaring. It's crazy, from reverse osmosis, filtering to get most of the water out before the boil. We're relying completely on the boil to get all of the water evaporated out of the sap. And then the way that works is once we collect the sap, we bring it back here and we start the boiling process, and we have to constantly watch it because you're stuck to it. You got to invest in a good skimmer because you end up getting this, we just call it a scum, but you have to constantly be pulling that off, throw that out. And then the way this barrel stove works, it's always cooler towards the front of the stove and hotter towards the back. So we use the front pan as a warming pan, and then we move it to the back. You can even see there's a harder boil going on here on the darker colored pan than there is in front. So heat it up here, and then we keep transferring it over to the back pan. You can see that's why it's darker. It's more concentrated. It's getting closer to syrup. A little pot and pour it to the back. Constantly have to be monitoring the fire temperature. You don't want it to boil too hard and potentially boil over and create a mess and lose your product, especially once you get it to this stage where it's getting closer to syrup. So water, as a lot of you probably know, boils at 212 degrees. Here it's going to vary day by day. Our water starts boiling at about 209 degrees, and we have a hard boil at 210. But again, that can vary based on barometric pressure and humidity and all these things. So in theory, you want to kind of test that every day when you're doing this. Syrup, it becomes syrup once you reach about 7 degrees above the boiling temperature of your water. There's things you can do to test the sugar content, the bricks, all these things. I have the stuff to do that. I just don't get that complex. I kind of just do it old school with the spoon. I use a thermometer, and I old school with the spoon, and I watch and I look for certain characteristics. I tend to go to around 218, even 219 degrees. We start here, pour the water in the front pan, put it to the back pan, and once this back pan starts getting enough of the water out, it'll start increasing in temperature. So it'll go above that 210. We start seeing 211, 212, around 213. I like to pull it out of here, and I'll put that into a pot and bring that inside, and I'll finish it on the stove inside. You don't want to do this process, as you can look at all of this. You don't want to be doing this inside your house in case you're thinking of trying this in your backyard, because you'll pull the wallpaper off your house with all this steam and it gets sticky, and you don't want to do that. Just finishing in the house is one thing, but you don't want to do the whole process inside. We'll put it in a pot on the stove, and then you have to really watch it because it'll reach a point oftentimes around, say, 215, 216 degrees. It'll just, in a heartbeat, like you look away and suddenly you look back and your pot is just boiling over with tiny little bubbles, and it'll make a massive sticky mess. So it takes just a lot of time and effort. I mean, when I'm doing this, it's often 12 to 16 hours a day, just constantly doing this. I think we're nearing the end of the sap season. Once the trees start budding out, that typically means that your sap season is done or coming to a close. And then we also really just look at the sap. When the sap comes out of the tree, it looks really clear, like water. If it starts getting hazy looking, foggy, if it has a strange smell or a little strange taste to it, you know you're done. One of the interesting things is you don't go and try and close up the holes when you're done. You pull your spiles out, that's the little things that stick into the tree. Once you pull those out, you leave them and allow the tree to heal itself. And then next year, when you tap the same tree again, you want to have a pretty significant distance away from your previous hole to allow that tree to continue to heal in that spot so you don't have bugs and insects and things that cause more damage. And then at the end, once we get it turned into syrup, then you go to the canning process. You're not really done, but now at least you're inside and you can kind of do it at a slower pace. I pour all of my sap into half-gallon jars and I refrigerate it for days or weeks. I mean, you could do it for a long time. I've refrigerated sap that way where it's not properly canned for over a year, and it's totally fine. In that process, everything settles, because when you're doing this, you get this, it's like a white substance, kind of chalky, and it's just the minerals. It's just pulling the minerals out of the sap. So it's that mineral buildup, but it doesn't taste that great. Some people like it, I don't. So I let all that settle to the bottom, and then I'll just do a pour of just the syrup that's on top, and then I will heat that back up to 180 degrees to sterilize everything. You don't want to go beyond that or you're going to create more of the sugar sand again. Every time you boil, you'll create sugar sand. So about 180 degrees, and then from there you can do your final canning into, we just use mason jars. And then that's it, and then it's shelf stable. And there's syrup that has been pulled out of places from the 1800s that properly canned, it's still perfectly good from, well over 100 years ago. So yeah, syrup is a pretty amazing thing that way. Go make some syrup.